Welcome to the Produce Moms Podcast, where we believe there is a produce mom in all of us. I'm Lori Taylor, founder and CEO of the Produce Moms. For 10 years, I sold fresh produce to over 300 grocery stores in the U.S. And today, my team and I are fully focused on inspiring people to eat more fruits and vegetables. This show is just one of the ways that we hope to inspire you and your family to eat more produce and live a better life. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, join our community of almost 40,000 in all 50 states and over 30 countries by visiting theproducemoms.com/subscribe. And be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks for being here. Enjoy today's show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is the Produce Moms Podcast, and my name is Lori Taylor. I'm the host of the show and the founder of the Produce Moms, and I feel very blessed to welcome today's guest. We're going to invite Brian Coates onto the show. He is the Vice President of Sales and Business Development at Applewood Fresh. And for those of you that are, avid fans of the Produce Moms, you know how special Applewood Fresh is to our brand and our entire community at TPM. We are not only brand partners with Applewood Fresh, but we actually have a co-branded bag that you can buy at grocery retail. Some of your favorite apple varieties in both 3 and 5 pound bags. They carry the Applewood Fresh logo, as well as this really fun Produce Moms design. And my favorite part, a virtual field trip that is accessible through a QR code and has all sorts of, not just a glimpse into their Michigan apple orchard and their operation at Applewood Fresh, but also all sorts of fun activities and even lesson plans. And everything meets national academic standards. So it's been a great partnership working with them. They are so purpose-driven in how they work with the Produce Moms and work towards better educating and inspiring the end consumer, Produce Moms everywhere, all of us. So today's going to be a great episode. We're going to talk about apples. We're going to learn more about, Applewood Fresh from the inside the business. And it's time to bring Brian onto the show. So Brian, welcome. We're glad you're here.
Thank you. Glad I'm on with you here today.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Long overdue at that. It's been a great partnership working with Applewood Fresh, and it's wonderful to bring your voice onto this platform. So tell all of our audience a little bit more about yourself, your professional background.
Yeah, so I actually have been in the business for over 35 years. I actually started with Meijer on the retail side. 32 plus years there. Started out as a bagger pushing carts, and back when Meijer actually bagged the groceries. Moved into the produce department as a clerk for a short time, then went on to be a produce manager for about a little over a year or so, and then got into the buying office. And over the course of time, I've bought pretty much almost every commodity. The last 7-8 years I was there at Meijer, I was the senior buyer, so kind of oversaw the buying team and took care of all the pricing and that. So all in all, it's about 28 years on the procurement side of the business, and about 10 of that buying apples, on and off, a couple of different stints. So a lot of time buying apples over the years. When I left Meijer, I worked for a wholesale distributor in the state of Michigan for about 2.5 years as their Director of Procurement. And then got the opportunity to come over on board here on the sales side now for 2.5 years, going on 3 years with Applewood Fresh. So kind of both sides of the business, longer on the procurement side, but having fun on the sales side now.
You're pretty well versed on that supply chain, the working now at the farm level, and helping drive the sales really at the beginning of that supply chain journey. And then of course the downstream, with point of sale at retail, all of that. So really fascinating and diverse background. So how long have you been with Applewood Fresh?
I started, it'll be about 3 years, first of the year here, and started out doing a little consulting with them and then came on board with them. So Yeah, two and three quarters or so as actual VP of sales on that.
That's great. So tell us more about the brand. Obviously I have my own sentiments in the way that I introduce it, but I'd love to hear from you, especially with the lens of, you're the vice president of sales and business development. So how do you tell people about your employer and about your business?
Yeah. So Applewood Fresh has been around for as an actual Applewood Fresh Growers, as an actual company for just a little over 2 years. It's gone through a couple of different, names over the course of time, and separated out from a partnership with some other Michigan folks a few years ago. But it dates back to the Applewood orchards and the Swindeman family. Mm-hmm. And that kind of really goes back all the way to 1935. They're in their third generation of ownership here in the state of Michigan, and actually have the fourth generation now on board in different areas, learning the business. So it's nice to work for a family run company, and actually one of the growers. So that's nice. And we have primarily family-owned orchards that we sell for. Pretty much most of all the ones in Michigan are that way. Around the state, we have growers. The Swindeman family is located in the southeast corner of Michigan. If we were actually, on a video, I'd hold up my hand like most of us in Michigan do to
show you the mitten.
show the mitten where that's at. But then we have a number of growers on the west side of the state in the main growing area, which is where our sales office is in Sparta. And we have some orchards in the northwest corner of Michigan, up towards where Traverse City is, for any of the folks that may know that in the state. Let's see, we have through the course of the season, we have about 20 varieties of apples that we do. We have 3 packing facilities. Season-wise, we generally start in mid-August. Rave, which I know you're familiar with that, and the Sweet for the 2 that we start with. We do have some Paula Red, but that's one that's kind of the legacy varieties that's going away. And we'll usually go through the end of July, sometimes into August with that crop before we start the new crop. I would say one of the other things that we think we do well, sustainability is something that I think is important to a lot of folks.
So important.
We do a lot of things, from the grower to the pack house to shipping, whether it's recycling and composting. A lot of the growers are really working on reducing and eliminating fertilizers to integrated pest management. Mm-hmm. Many of them are using trickle irrigation, which is much better for water usage or cutting down water usage. It gets the moisture right to the tree where it needs to. Solar power on top of the packing facilities, eco-friendly packaging. And for any of the folks that the retailers that we service or wholesalers, selling regional apples is better because there's less food miles.
Right. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think that came alive in a big way in Q4 of 2021, as our industry dealt with massive inflation and rising costs, and the whole farming economy and the supply chain really reacted to that. And I think one big way that they reacted was they were choosing products that they didn't have to pay massive levels of freight on. And we know this from we work with apple growers in other regions. Washington State is one of them. And, a load of apples from comparing what it used to cost them in Washington to truck apples from, Yakima Valley to New York City versus what it's costing, or Indianapolis, Indiana, for that matter, where I live,
right.
Versus sourcing the apples, from a localized region such as Michigan. And then of course, New York has a ton of growers as well. But, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that the way the apple industry is uniquely positioned with that. I mean, you have iconic growing regions that can support, the American food economy with less food miles and apples.
Yeah, it's interesting because, Washington is so big, larger than really all the rest of us combined, the whole eastern part of the U.S.
Right.
So they've always dominated really the marketplace. But you're seeing that change again. Just mentioned the cost of freight is it's unbelievable. I mean, I remember back in the days when I was at Meijer and was involved in the logistics piece of things, and I can't believe the price of a truck right now to come from Washington to here. So, and I think the other thing is that I think that the Michigan growers as well as the New York growers have done a much better job as they've really moved into the more modern way of growing in their orchards and that with high density and moving into newer varieties. And that's something that we kind of pride ourselves at Applewood that we do a lot of test things that testing may take to 10 years before you even decide to put something to commercial planting. So there's a lot of work that goes into before you actually get into the crop and that. But so yeah, I think a lot of the buyers out there are starting to look at Michigan, New York being the two large ones here in the East, and what they're able to do. This year we happen to have a pretty good size profile, which helps us compete a little more with the Washington because usually their fruit's a little bigger.
Right.
So a lot of things, a lot of changes in the packing facilities to modernize and that in these areas. So it's a good time for us in the East to really continue to build our market share.
And lean into the strengths that you have to offer to, retailers and consumers alike. It is absolutely, and you are right with your sentiments on Applewood Fresh, really priding themselves in offering these managed varieties, these more modern varieties, so to say, of apples. Of all the brands that we work with, Applewood Fresh has absolutely, the broadest profile in terms of the managed varieties that when we say managed varieties, and Brian, I'll explain it and please chime in if you would want to elaborate or modify what I say here. But managed varieties are the branded apples. So these are apples like, speaking on the portfolio that Applewood Fresh offers, that includes the Evercrisp apple, the Sweet Tango apple, the Kanzi and the Kiku apples. These are apples that have been, they've been bred, with natural cross-pollination methods. But the growers, it's been a more deliberate effort from the apple breeding point of view, where you're taking key characteristics or apple varieties that have exactly what both farmers and consumers want and need. Because let me tell you how an apple that is difficult for the farmer to grow is going to be an apple that is inaccessible for the end consumer. It can taste amazing, but if it's difficult to thrive on the farm, we're not going to be able to to put it on those trucks, we're not going to be able to sell it at a price point that is sustainable. So that is a big part in product development in the world of apples. But these managed varieties, they've really got something special with them. So there's extra marketing efforts behind them. There's incredible brand names behind them. There are growers from multiple regions that are committed to farming this apple under that brand name and those grower standards for each of these different varieties. And when you visit the Applewood Fresh website, you'll see there are literally dozens that Applewood Fresh prides themselves on offering to households like yours and mine, as well as all of their retail clients. So that's what we mean when we say managed varieties. But anything you want to add to that, Brian?
Yeah, I think you kind of covered it all. You know, it's something that, again, it takes many, many years as you go through. You know, you look at, say, as a Sweet Tango, and they may have had numerous ones that they were looking at that had different numbers at the time to then ultimately get to. So it takes a lot of work with growers that are willing to help
and do the trials
and figure out what varieties work best in the different growing regions. So yeah, and then, you know, really the managed it really boils down to it's not something that every grower can grow and then pack and sell. It's a select group of growers around the country. So typically, you know, they're going to limit who they are and who they work with, and they're going to work with some of the best growers because they're the ones that are going to do the best with these varieties. So
right.
Again, it's nice to have a company that's at the forefront of doing that.
Yeah, we feel the same way with our ability to help you, bring the marketing to life on all these different varieties. It's one of our favorite things about working with Applewood Fresh. So let's talk about, you mentioned in some of our pre-show conversations, just, wintertime and how fall is, people think of apples really in the fall season. Like you get past Labor Day and then it seems like immediately everything transitions to pumpkins and apples in the grocery store and really everywhere. Like you go into a department store and you've got all these, everything transitions to fall, you've got apples on your apple scented candles at the department stores and, all of that. So what do you do at Applewood Fresh to make sure that you ride that consumer excitement wave all the way into winter? Because this is one of the best time of years to enjoy apples as well. I mean, they're still very fresh. It's a great, as far as healthy lifestyles and the healthy New Year concept, apples are right there to help people meet their goals from a lifestyle point of view too. So any thoughts on the winter season specifically?
Yeah, I think that one of the things is that I think a lot of us all think of, again, you just mentioned it, apples are in the fall time. That's just what we all think. And those of us that grow up in the Midwest, we're going to apple orchards and cider mills and that type of thing. And then you get into, maybe December, and that's when California citrus kind of starts coming in. So you kind of, change your thought process there. One of the things that a lot of these emerging varieties provide is that a number of them are later season as far as the harvest goes. So some of the other varieties in Gala and Honeycrisp and a lot of that stuff is those varieties are harvested earlier in the year.
Right.
Some of these managed or emerging branded, I mean, there's a lot of different names for them, but they are some of the last that are harvested.
Right.
Harvested in, more moderate temperature. Some of them are best to let them sit for a few months. So after the first of the year, the flavor profile has actually gotten better as they've, sat in storage. So you get, what's nice is that we've got a number of varieties that after the first of the year, to kind of, as everybody's eating healthy again, looking to diet and that, and everybody likes to look towards fresh fruit and vegetables. So it's a great opportunity for us with some of the varieties that we have, that we are able to, put in the market after the first of the year. Evercrisp being a big one, stores very well, very firm, and great flavor. Honeycrisp, Fuji, Parentage. Kanzi's another good one. That one's got a little more tart, sweet profile. That's a Brayburn Gala Cross. So that's a good one. You've got the Kiku, which is a hybrid strain of Fuji. So anybody that really likes super sweet, it's one of the sweetest ones out there. So it's, there's some good ones that, it's a good time for customers to maybe try something different. Maybe they're used to eating a Gala or a McIntosh. Not as many people Red Delicious, but still people that eat Red Delicious.
Right.
Unfortunately for us this year, our Honeycrisp crop was down. So we're already done with that. So again, but I think it's a good time you kind of bring some newness to the category, and it's a great way for customers looking for, something different that, maybe they're used to, but apples that are later season harvested will come at the first of the year and have, great experience for them when they get them home.
Yeah, definitely. And, you mentioned earlier when we were talking about the food miles, one thing we didn't cover, Brian, is what is like the standard Michigan apple distribution footprint? If you're thinking of the map of the United States, where do your apples typically go?
Yeah, well, obviously the big area is, say Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. We'll get over into Wisconsin, Minnesota. Mm-hmm. That's about as far west, typically, as we go down into Iowa, down to Missouri. Texas is a good market for us.
Yeah.
Florida has been in the past. Some of the folks down there are looking more towards organic. Mm-hmm. Which unfortunately the Michigan climate, nobody has really figured out commercially yet how to do things organically here with the growing conditions that we have. So that limits a little bit. We don't generally get much too far east because you run up against New York and
Pennsylvania.
That's a little, that's a little bit more regional you get into Pennsylvania, they have their own apples.
Right.
Down into Virginia and that. So it's to the East Coast. So.
Yeah. Your three primary apple growing regions for sure. Like you said, Washington they have the volume, they have the climate, they have the technology, they have the footprint. Like you can combine all these other regions in the US, and Washington state is still bigger, but
yeah. For sure.
And then you have Michigan is right up there, as well as New York. Those are your big three for, like if you want to think of King, Queen, Joker, not that anyone wants to be the Joker, right? But
one of us is the Joker.
King, Queen, Jack. I meant King, Queen, Jack. No one's the Joker. King, Queen, Jack. So there's your royal flush, right? I'm not a poker player. Can you tell? But those would be your big three. So it's Washington State, Michigan, and New York. And then, like we said, there's Pennsylvania is a competitive region for apples, and there's many others. But there's also such a high demand. Apples are they're a number one fruit in American households. It is a go-to. It is something where even if it's not on your grocery list, you're buying it. We know that from consumer and shopper data. So I don't know if you want to talk about that or how the consumer demand potentially shifts at this time of year.
Well, yeah, I actually, as you said that, it kind of reminded me of one thing. One of the nice things, I guess for Michigan is that we typically do not get as large a fruit as Washington State does. Mm-hmm.
climate driven or
it's climate. It's also some of the growing practices, and some of that's changing.
Right.
Michigan also has a higher what they call processed market. So a lot of the apples that go for juice and applesauce and slices and all that, the size profile doesn't need to be as big, there. But one of the things with COVID that you've seen as a change is that more and more consumers are looking for something that they can get in and get out of the store quickly, and something that may be in a bag that they feel more comfortable with, food safety wise.
Well, and I also think that some of that is driven by just grocery store operations too. I mean, they're dealing with labor issues the same way every other industry is. And it's a heck of a lot easier from an operation standpoint to put, a dozen bags on the shelf versus, 80 apples individually on the shelf. It takes less labor from an ops standpoint.
We've seen some retailers go from maybe 40% of their business was bagged fruit before to now it's 60%. So
wow, that's a significant shift.
Than bulk. You're seeing a lot more tote bags where it's not completely closed, but again, a lot of things that kind of fit our size profile. So you're seeing some change, there. I do think one of the challenges in the apple category is because we have so many varieties. There is a challenge out at retail right now with signage and being able to convey to the consumer what the flavor profile is.
Yes.
Too many of us on this side of the business are worried about where the product comes from, whether it's our name individually on the sticker or bag, and a bunch of different things that don't mean anything to the consumer, where we should be telling them that it's sweet, tart, somewhere in between.
Ideal for baking. Exactly. Naturally slow to oxidize, perfect for slices. I agree with you. Yeah.
So, I think that's a big challenge for us moving forward on apples, where
consumer education takes more of a forefront.
I think you even see one of the other categories that I bought for years was tomatoes. And you see that in tomatoes too. There's tomatoes now out there, and as a consumer, you walk up and what kind of do I want to buy? Is there something?
Yeah, what do I do with this brown tomato? Is it rotten? Is it ripe? People. There is a lot of consumer confusion. You're absolutely right. So that's
obviously an area that we've got to get better to be able to drive consumption, because I think sometimes you can walk up and there's so many varieties, and you look at all of them, and you look at all the different price points, and you say, do you just stick with the same variety you've always bought because you know what that is, and you're not willing to try something at a higher retail? But that we definitely have to improve that at retail moving forward.
Right. Well, no, all great insights, wonderful sentiments, Brian. I can't have someone like you who have spent, the greater part of your adult life working in produce and specifically focused on apples. I have to ask you, what's your favorite way to enjoy apples?
Besides eating them, fresh, it's one of the easiest fruits to eat. Peel it. You can just take a bite of it. So, that's good. I like to have apples with, maybe it's a wine and cheese and apple.
I do too. Did you know we did a whole ebook on that, Brian?
Yes, I did. And,
we got to plug that. I agree with you. It is the ultimate pairing for a wine and cheese. Yes. Yeah. And it's such a simple thing, but it can become so elegant with how you pair it up.
The other thing is I have a daughter who is really into the charcuterie. I think I'm saying that right.
Yes, you are.
Trays. And she's actually started, especially now that I'm, kind of exclusively doing the apples. She started to include apples with her cheese and meats and nuts and things. So, that's a great way. I love an apple pie. Unfortunately, not as many people bake. I mean, you tend to during the holidays, maybe get a little bit more, but, hey, even as you get maybe, New Year's or anything after, maybe it's a cocktail with, maybe it's an apple teeny or.
Yeah, you're right. Or if you're looking for that healthy New Year inspo, we did a great recipe with you all, and it, I think it was like a kale base, and it had some delicious apple slices on it, some fresh cranberries,
salads.
Yes.
As people eat salads, that's a great, great thing to add some crunch and texture and that to your salad and that. So, there's a lot of other ways.
You're like Forrest Gump right now. Is there any way you don't like to eat apples, right?
Yeah. I think too many people, at my age growing up, it was applesauce and, pies and things like that. But there's so many, it is such a versatile piece of fruit. And again, there's not much else that's that easy to eat right out of hand for a snack instead of
the ultimate fast food.
Healthy.
Yes.
Instead of eating some chips or something else, apples are great for that.
Well, we certainly agree with you at the Produce Moms. And, Brian, this has been a pleasure to have you on as a guest with the podcast. So thank you so much for your time and your sentiments. Thank you very much for the brand partnership. We love supporting what you're doing. We believe in what you're doing. As Midwesterners, we get a thrill when we get to buy the Applewood Fresh products at our local grocery stores. And we encourage folks, look for it, buy apples first and foremost, buy apples and buy them often, buy them every time you grocery shop. And if you do see that Applewood Fresh logo on the bag or the package, definitely pick them up, because this is a company that's done a lot for the Produce Moms and for all of us here, but they've done a lot for the industry too. And so they deserve your support. So with that, Brian, I welcome you for closing remarks for today's show. And, just thank you very much for your time.
Well, I appreciate being on, and of course we appreciate all you do for us and for the apple industry, and really, fruit and veg industry in general of trying to get the message out there of eating more fresh fruits and vegetables. I guess really kind of where I'd leave it is obviously we're proud of our brand. But even more so, I think we're proud of Michigan apples and the quality that we grow. We think we have, kind of the perfect climate with where we're at. And, on top of that, for any of the folks out there that are really into sustainability in that, buying local or regionally can help reduce the carbon footprint, the flavor profile. We think the product's fresher, there's less food miles on it. So, it's a win-win all the way around. And again, apples are such an easy piece of fruit to eat and obviously healthy for you. So, I guess the old adage of an apple a day, keeps the doctor away. So, keep eating apples.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Produce Moms podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a featured guest, just send an email to Lori@theproducemoms.com. We know there is a produce mom in you because there's a produce mom in all of us. Join our community on Facebook and all social platforms. Help us change the way America eats. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.